In the quiet of a bustling city, where the hum of ambition drowns out the whispers of the heart, there lived a man named Elias. His days were a blur of deadlines, crowded trains, and the weight of unspoken grievances. Elias carried a shadow within him, a resentment that clung like damp earth to his soul. It stemmed from a moment years ago when a colleague's betrayal cost him a promotion he had poured his heart into. The wound festered, not because of the lost opportunity, but because Elias could not let go of the sting of being wronged. Each morning, as he sipped his coffee and stared at the skyline, he replayed the betrayal, letting it shape his view of the world. His heart grew heavy, his smiles scarce, and his nights restless. One evening, weary from another day of forcing civility, Elias wandered into a small park tucked between towering buildings. The air was cool, scented with jasmine, and the soft rustle of leaves seemed to invite him to pause. He sat on a weathered bench, watching the last rays of sunlight filter through the branches. An old man, with eyes that held the calm of a still lake, sat beside him. His presence was unintrusive like a gentle breeze, yet Elias felt a quiet pull to speak. "Why does it hurt so much?" he asked, almost to himself, to carry this anger. The old man, whose name was Tenzin, smiled faintly, as if he had heard the question countless times before. He spoke of a teaching from the Buddha, a story of two monks traveling a muddy path. One monk, carrying a grudge against a rude villager, grew bitter with each step, while the other walked lightly, unburdened. "Why do you not carry the villager's words?" the first monk asked. The second replied, "I set them down at the village gate." "Why do you still carry them?" Tenzin's voice was soft, like a lullaby for the soul. "Resentment," he said, "is a load you choose to bear. It is not the betrayal that binds you, but your refusal to release it." Elias listened, his chest tightening. He had clung to his pain, as if it defined him, as if letting go meant erasing the injustice. Tenzin spoke again, his words weaving through the evening air. "The Buddha taught that suffering arises from attachment, not just to things but to stories we tell ourselves. Your resentment is a story you've kept alive, feeding it with every retelling. To escape the pain, you must face the resentment, not with anger, but with understanding." As the stars began to emerge, Elias felt a stirring within. The old man's words were not a lecture, but an invitation to look inward, to see the chains he had forged himself. Tenzin did not push or prod. He simply sat, his presence a quiet anchor. Elias closed his eyes, breathing deeply, letting the sounds of the park, the distant hum of traffic, the soft chirp of crickets wash over him. For the first time in years, he felt the weight of his resentment not as a burden to carry, but as a choice he could set down. Elias returned to the park the next evening, drawn by an unspoken need to sit with Tenzin again. The city's clamor felt softer now, as if the old man's words had draped a veil over its harsh edges. He found Tenzin on the same bench, his hands folded gently, gazing at a sparrow pecking at the earth. Elias sat, and without preamble, Tenzin began to speak, his voice steady like the flow of a river. He told of a Buddhist teaching, the parable of the poisoned arrow. A man struck by an arrow refused to let it be removed until he knew who shot it, why, and from what bough. While he questioned, the poison spread, and he suffered needlessly. "So it is with resentment," Tenzin said. "You seek to understand why you were betrayed, but the why does not heal the wound. Facing resentment means seeing the arrow, not chasing the archer. Elias nodded slowly, his mind tracing back to his colleague's betrayal. He had spent years dissecting the motives, replaying conversations, imagining confrontations that never happened. Each thought was a turn of the arrow, deepening the wound. Tenzin's eyes met his, kind but unyielding. The Buddha taught that the mind is the source of suffering and liberation. When you dwell on resentment, you build a cage for your heart. To face it, you must observe it without feeding it. Sit with the feeling, not the story. Tenzin suggested a practice, to sit in silence each day, noticing the anger as it arose, not pushing it away or clinging to it, but letting it pass like clouds across. Elias tried it that night, alone in his apartment. He sat cross-legged on the floor, the hum of the city outside his window. At first his mind roared with memories of the betrayal, each one sharp and vivid. But as he breathed, focusing on the rise and fall of his chest, the images began to soften, like ink dispersing in water. It was not easy, and the resentment still lingered, but for a moment he felt a glimpse of freedom, a space where the pain did not own him. Over the next few weeks, Elias made the park a ritual, meeting Tenzin under the same canopy of leaves. Each visit felt like peeling back a layer of his heart, revealing not just pain but the roots beneath it. One evening, as the sky burned orange, Tenzin spoke of the Four Noble Truths, the cornerstone of the Buddha's teachings. He explained that suffering is universal, but its cause lies in clinging to desires, to grudges, to the need for things to be different. Your resentment, Tenzin said, is a clinging to a past that no longer exists. To face it is to see its impermanence, to understand that the moment of betrayal is gone, and only your mind keeps it alive. Elias thought of his family, too, how his resentment had spilled beyond the workplace, tainting his patience with his wife, his playfulness with his daughter. He saw now how his anger had become a lens, coloring every interaction. Tenzin shared another teaching, the concept of metta, or loving kindness. Send goodwill to yourself first, he said, then to those who hurt you. Not because they deserve it, but because your heart deserves peace. Elias hesitated, the idea of wishing well to his betrayer feeling like a betrayal of his own pain. Yet Tenzin's voice, gentle as a stream over stones, urged him to try. Start small, he said. Wish for your own heart to be free. Then perhaps for theirs. That night, Elias sat again in silence, this time trying metta. He whispered to himself, "May I be at peace." The words felt clumsy at first, but with each repetition, they grew softer, like a prayer settling into his bones. He pictured his colleague, not with anger, but as a person caught in their own struggles. It was not forgiveness, not yet, but a crack in the wall he had built. As he breathed, he felt the resentment loosen, not gone, but less heavy, like a stone he could finally set down. As autumn deepened, the park's leaves turned golden, and Elias noticed a shift within himself. His visits with Tenzin had become a quiet anchor, a place where he could unravel the knots of his heart. One evening, under a sky streaked with clouds, Tenzin spoke of the wheel of life, a Buddhist teaching that maps the cycles of suffering and liberation. Resentment, he said, is born of ignorance, not of the world, but of your own mind. You see the betrayal as a fixed truth, but all things change. The colleague who wronged you, the moment of pain, even your anger, All are impermanent, like leaves falling from these trees. Elias reflected on his life beyond the betrayal. His resentment had not only trapped him in the past, but had also clouded his future. He had stopped dreaming, stopped laughing with his daughter over small joys, stopped sharing quiet moments with his wife. Tenzin's words reminded him of a saying: holding on to anger is like grasping a hot coal to throw at another. You are the one who gets burned. To face resentment, Tenzin continued, is to see it as a teacher. It shows you where you are attached, where you can grow. He taught Elias to practice mindfulness, to notice each moment without judgment, to let thoughts of anger arise and pass like ripples on. Elias began to weave this practice into his days. At work, when memories of the betrayal surfaced, he paused, breathed, and let them drift without chasing them. At home, he listened more deeply to his daughter's stories, felt the warmth of his wife's hand in his. The resentment was still there, a faint echo, but it no longer held him captive. Each mindful moment was a step toward release, a quiet reclaiming of his peace. One crisp morning, Elias walked to the park, the air sharp with the promise of winter. The bench was empty, Tenzin nowhere to be seen. Elias sat, feeling a quiet pang, yet also a sense of gratitude. The old man's teachings had taken root, not as rules, but as a gentle guide for his heart. He thought of the Buddha's words, "You, yourself, as much as anybody in the entire universe, deserve your love and affection." Elias realized that facing his resentment had been an act of self-compassion, a choice to free himself from a story that no longer served him. He looked at the bare branches above, their stark beauty a reminder of impermanence. The betrayal, once a towering wound, now felt like a distant chapter, not erased, but no longer defining. Elias had begun to forgive not for his colleague, but for himself. He practiced metta daily, sending kindness to his family, his co-workers, even the stranger who had wronged him. Each prayer was a thread, weaving a tapestry of peace. At home, he laughed more, listened better, and found joy in the small moments: a shared meal, his daughter's giggle, his wife's quiet smile. As he rose from the bench, Elias felt lighter, as if the park itself had exhaled with him. A proverb drifted through his mind: the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. He had begun anew, not by erasing the past, but by choosing how to carry it. With each step away from the park, he carried Tenzin's wisdom, the Buddha's truths, and a heart slowly mending. The journey was not over, but Elias knew he was walking toward a life less burdened, one mindful moment at a time.